Hello and welcome back to the Stronghold. I'm the Magi, and ready or not, we just went through the first standard rotation in about 2 years. So a lot has happened. And believe it or not, it's never too early to start thinking about the next rotation, especially for budget players. So today we are going to be looking at all of the sets that are affected by next rotation, which is anticipated in January of 2027. That's right, roughly 18 months from the time of recording. The idea here is to help you identify those heavy-hitting uncommon cards that can help you get more diversity and options in your collection, particularly for those who were not around when these sets were released, and all the while preserving your hard-earned wild cards as much as possible. But before we get into all that, allow me to take a moment for some real talk. You're most likely here at the Stronghold because you've taken notice of the value-oriented content that I make. It may seem out of this world, but the truth is mid-range channels like this only make it thanks to viewer support. The reality is YouTube simply doesn't do enough ad share profit sharing to cover even basic cost of operations for a channel like mine. I've never envisioned the Stronghold as a way to make money, but having it reach a level of self-sufficiency would be really nice. And hey, I'm all about value, and that effort doesn't fall short in my Patreon. For as little as a $1 a month pledge, you get access to additional content, analysis, and tools, as well as a shout out in most every YouTube video I produce. The list and draft analysis alone could easily add $1 or more to your collection every month. Best of all, your support goes right back into the channel and the expanding content I produce. There's a link to my Patreon page in the description below, so I'd appreciate it if you take a moment and check it out. Every bit of support, no matter how small, makes a huge difference to our future. Thanks so much for your time and consideration. Now, what were we talking about? Oh yeah, right. All right, so we're going to start this conversation off with the 4 sets that are still standard legal, but not legal in Alchemy. So, hear me. If Alchemy is your jam, you don't want to be crafting these cards because they're not going to be legal there. But they will add a real measure of versatility to your standard playable collection for roughly the next 18 months. These sets, of course, are Wilds of Arjane, Lost Caverns of Ixalan, Murders at Karlov Manor, and Outlaws of Thunder Junction. I always like to start a conversation like this by discussing mono red because, frankly, it's always a universal constant on Arena, particularly for budget players, in really every format. That is, except for now, in Standard. In a post-ban environment and post-rotation, no one really knows what mono red is going to look like and probably won't for another couple of weeks. And I might do a follow-up video on mono red once it starts to solidify, but I really didn't feel justified in holding off this video because of that. Now, with that having been said, I think there are a couple things worth considering as a red mage from this period of Standard. Imodane's Recruiter, for instance, gives you a nice go-wide strategy, basically in a single adventure / creature card. Demonic Ruckus might be the perfect choice in today's mono red Wild Wild West where anything could happen. And of course, Lightning Helix stretches the boundary a little bit of it being a mono red deck, but this card has done tremendous things in the past. And Boros, being the aggro deck of choice, is not outside the realm of consideration whatsoever. Brawl is without a doubt one of the most budget-friendly formats available on Arena. Not only is it a singleton format, so you only need one copy of every card other than basic lands, but it's pretty hard to make it more budget than doing it with an uncommon commander. And Lost Caverns of Ixalan gave us 3 really solid standouts. Bartolome cares about sacrificing creatures or artifacts to make it bigger. It also is a free sack outlet, which, if you've ever played any sort of aristocrats, is a big deal. Kutzel is all about the +1/+1 counters, even though he doesn't have that language directly on him. He also draws you cards and prevents your opponents from casting spells during your turn. And last but certainly not least, Captain Storm was a brawl deck that we built back when LCI came out. It is all about artifacts, putting +1/+1 counters on a pirate you control whenever an artifact enters play. If you're paying attention and know what's going on with Edge of Eternities, you'll recognize that each and every one of these archetypes is supported strongly by commons and uncommons from Edge of Eternities, making any of these really simple decks to put together right now. And hey, let's face it, as budget players, we are very often faced with the idea that our opponents have, well, cooler cards than we do. So consider picking up a copy of Rarity's Tempting Apple for your brawl decks so that you can use your opponent's creatures against them. When it comes to build-arounds, it really doesn't get much better than Insidious Roots, and in fact, after the July bannings, this at least briefly shot right to the top of the standard meta. This deck has a lot of potential both on the meta side of things, as well as just being a potentially fun budget deck. And when it comes to those hard-working singles from these older standard sets, Cavern of Souls does so much work for really any tribal strategy. The ability to land one of your creatures without fear of counterspell is really, really solid. And of course, Lost Jite is the best equipment for any deck that's playing creatures whatsoever. It just does so much and costs so little once you get past that Mythic Wildcard, that is. And believe it or not, the conversation is not yet over, because Bloomburrow and Duskmourn House of Horror will both be rotating in expected January 2027 from both Standard and Alchemy. So let's take a look at the staples from this set that budget players should consider. First up, and arguably most important, Fabled Passage is one of those highly flexible rare lands that are perfect for budget players and fit into virtually any deck. Investing to make sure you have at least one copy is a great idea, but I wouldn't go beyond that at this point. Not only is this preparing for its own rotation, but we already see the card coming that's going to replace it. More on that at a later time. Patchwork Banner is another must-consider card for anybody who wants to play tribal strategies, whether that is the currently very successful Bunnies deck from Bloomburrow, or any of the tribal strategies like Elves or Goblins presented in Foundations. This uncommon not only fixes your mana, but it acts as a lord and pumps your team. Now, I am certainly not one to suggest crafting entire playsets of rare cards that are, well, in their last leg of Standard, but when it comes to Stormchaser's talent, you still might want to consider this. It is a very meta-influential card, and if I may be frank and prognostic, I think it has work to do in Eternal formats, particularly Pioneer, for potentially years to come now. For a more budget recommendation, Arabella Abandoned Doll from Boros is by far the most budget commander from these two sets. We built a deck on this as a community months and months ago. It's still out there and well worth your time and attention. And if you find you're a bit flush in wildcards and really looking for a new deck archetype, 12 uncommons and 4 commons will pick you up the Enchantress package of Optimistic Scavenger, Ethereal Armor, Shard Mage's Rescue, and of course Sheltered by Ghosts. This is practically a deck unto itself and combines with many other white and X strategies to give you some very solid performance for no higher rarity wildcards. And while we're talking about enchantments, Valgavoth's Lair is another one of those highly flexible lands that budget players have to pay attention to. You can choose a color as it enters, though it does enter tapped. At this point, I would really only recommend this land for people that are going to make use of the fact of it having an enchantment subtype, like use with that Enchantress package that we just looked at. Otherwise, I would say Starting Town is more flexible, same cost, life notwithstanding, and is going to be in Standard much longer. So there it is, guys. Those are my thoughts on the next rotation, as well as what I think is worth the budget despite that rotation looming. But now is your opportunity to get down in the comments. Let me know what you think about these recommendations, as well as anything you'd like to discuss that you're thinking about and I didn't talk about. And of course, I want to take this opportunity to thank my supporting patrons, because being a small content creator comes with big bills. And I just couldn't do everything that I do without their monthly support. Thanks, guys. And of course, if you enjoyed this video and found it helpful in your arena experience, we have a few suggestions for what you could watch next.